I want you to look at this photo. That is a real listing on a real real estate platform with a real price tag. And I need you to tell me, would you go inside? 7 listings today, real addresses, real prices, each one more difficult to look at than the last. Some of them sold, some of them didn't. But every single one of them made people stop scrolling and then immediately keep scrolling. Let's go through them. Listing 1307 Church Street, St. Matthews, South Carolina. Our first listing is in St. Matthews, South Carolina. And I want you to look at the photo before I tell you anything about it. St. Matthews is the county seat of Calhoun County, one of the smallest, most rural counties in South Carolina. Spanish moss, ancient oak trees, a town that operates at a pace that most of America has forgotten. And on Church Street, sitting on a full acre of land beneath those oaks, this 307 Church Street, built in 1876, 4 bedrooms, 4 full bathrooms, 5,312 square feet, 5,312 square feet. Built in 1876, on an acre of land surrounded by mature oaks, camellias, and a garden that has been growing for nearly 150 years. Sold in September 2024 for $70,000. The listing description begins with a sentence that sets the tone perfectly. It says, "Imagine living the Southern dream in a small town with very little traffic." Very little traffic. That is how you know you are reading a listing for a home in St. Matthews, South Carolina, in a county with fewer than 15,000 residents. Now let me tell you what's inside this building. Heart of pine flooring from the 1800s. The listing specifically notes that each board was hand-selected, meaning someone in the 1870s stood over a pile of timber and chose, plank by plank, what would go under your feet. Original fireplaces throughout, a clawfoot bathtub. Original doors, meaning the doors hanging in their frames right now, were hung sometime in the 1870s and have opened and closed in this house for nearly 150 years. Charming chandeliers, custom built-ins, a sunroom, high ceilings, a formal living room, a formal dining room, a family room, a study, an eat-in kitchen, and an in-law floor plan, all inside 5,312 square feet, built in 1876. The listing also says, and I want to read this part carefully, some working plumbing and electrical. Some, not all, some, which means portions of the plumbing and electrical systems in this 148-year-old building are functional, and portions are not. And the listing is honest enough to use the word some rather than pretending otherwise. $70,000 for 5,312 square feet, built 1876. On an acre. In South Carolina, it sold in 6 days. 6 days on the market. Someone in September 2024 saw this building with its some working plumbing, its 148-year-old pine floors, its 4 full bathrooms and original fireplaces, and said yes within 6 days. That is either the best deal in South Carolina real estate history, or the new owner knows something the listing didn't say. Either way, they are now the ones living the Southern dream. On Church Street, beneath the oaks, in a house that has been watching this town since 1876. Listing 2, 581 Kelton Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. This next one is smaller, more modest, on a residential street in Columbus, Ohio. 581 Kelton Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1,314 square feet, built in 1900, sold in September 2025 for $250,000. A perfectly ordinary set of listing details. And then you look at the photos. This house was built at the turn of the 20th century, 1900. That means it is 125 years old. And from the photos, it looks exactly 125 years old. Not in a charming, preserved Victorian way, in a specific way that 125-year-old houses look when they have had a full century of weather, occupancy, paint layers, and time working on them. The narrow facade, the vertical proportions, the windows that are slightly too tall for their width, the porch detail that is original and has never been replaced. Look at the roofline, the way the house sits on its lot, the specific color that a painted wooden exterior turns after enough decades of sun and rain. 3 bedrooms and 1,314 square feet across 2 floors means rooms of a scale that modern construction simply doesn't produce. Low ceilings, Narrow hallways, doors that are shorter than what we expect now, the kind of interior where when you are standing in one of the bedrooms at night, the space feels smaller than it should. Kelton Avenue in Columbus is located in the Near East Side neighborhood, one of the oldest residential areas in the city. The street has houses dating to the late 1800s lining both sides. This specific house, built in 1900, has had occupants continuously for 125 years. The listing was active. It sold. Someone moved in. To a 125-year-old, 1,314 square foot house on Kelton Avenue, with rooms where the scale makes you feel like the walls are slightly closer than they should be. The Zestimate is $256,500, just barely above the $250,000 it sold for. The buyer paid almost exactly what Zillow said it was worth, which means the algorithm didn't think this house was particularly unusual. The photos suggest otherwise. Listing 3, 55S Pine Street, Alma, Colorado. This next listing is in a town called Alma, Colorado, and I want to start with some context, because the context is what makes this building what it is. Alma, Colorado. Elevation, 10,578 feet above sea level, the highest incorporated town in North America. At nearly 2 miles above sea level, in the mosquito range of the Rocky Mountains, Alma exists in a place where the air is thin, the winters are extreme, and the landscape has a specific quality that people who have been there describe as beautiful and oppressive in equal measure. In the 1870s and 1880s, Alma was a gold mining boomtown. More than 10,000 people flooded into this valley chasing gold in the mountains. By 1985, it was nearly a ghost town. 55 South Pine Street is the home and former hotel of James Moynihan, the founding father of Alma, Colorado. 2,444 square feet, 6 bedrooms. Built in 1860 on a mixed-use zoned lot with a natural spring on the property. The listing description calls this building the Spring House, named for that natural spring, and describes it as a landmark that has been worked on to stabilize and curate. Stabilize. The listing uses the word stabilize, not restore, not renovate, stabilize, which in construction means the structure needed intervention to prevent further deterioration before any restoration work could begin. The 6 bedrooms are former hotel rooms. This building housed prospectors, miners, and travelers coming through the highest incorporated town in North America from 1860 onward. Look at what 165 years does to a structure at 10,578 feet above sea level. The altitude, the snow load, the freeze-thaw cycles every winter for over a century and a half. The listing says, if these walls could talk, they have been talking for 165 years in a gold mining boomtown that nearly became a ghost town, in the highest incorporated town in North America, in a building that needed to be stabilized before it could be shown. Sold for $295,000. Someone is now the steward of James Moynihan's home in Alma, Colorado, at 10,578 feet, in a building that has been watching this mountain valley since 1860. Listing 4, 138 Amenia Road, Sharon, Connecticut. This next listing has a name, not an address, a name. Philston, 138 Amenia Road, Sharon, Connecticut, a Gilded Age estate in Litchfield County, one of the most historically preserved, architecturally significant corners of Connecticut, listed at $7,500,000. 31 photos on Zillow. Let me tell you what Philston is. Designed in 1903 by architect William Cromwell Jr., a name that appears in the architectural record of the Gilded Age alongside some of the most significant residential commissions of that era for Mr. and Mrs. Romulus Colgate. Romulus Colgate. Of the Colgate family, as in Colgate-Palmolive, as in one of the most prominent industrial families in American history at the turn of the 20th century. This is the house they built for their Connecticut estate. In 1903, 12,057 square feet, 9 bedrooms, 5 full bathrooms, 3 powder rooms, 3 floors. The architectural style is, and the listing description uses this exact language, a blend of Italianate Renaissance Revival, Palladian, Neo-Gothic, and French Empire influences. That is 4 distinct historical architectural traditions, synthesized by a Gilded Age architect into a single Connecticut country house in 1903. The listing says every original detail is meticulously preserved in impeccable condition. Impeccable. In a building that is 122 years old, the property sits across 106 acres on 3 distinct parcels. The landscape was designed by Edward Hamilton Bell, a landscape architect whose work appears across some of the most significant estates of the early 20th century. Rolling hills, pristine woodlands, majestic estate trees, equestrian trails across the acreage. A separate 5,700 square foot, 3-story carriage house on its own dedicated parcel. A billiards room. A library. Staff quarters. The annual property taxes are $67,485. That number, $67,485 a year in taxes, tells you something about what it costs to simply hold this property before you do anything else with it. $7,500,000 to purchase, $67,485 annually to own, for a 12,057 square foot Gilded Age estate designed for a Colgate heir on 106 Connecticut acres, with a landscape designed by a named landscape architect and architecture that blends 4 historical styles. The listing has been active since August 2025. When you look at the 31 photos, the scale of the rooms, the quality of what has been preserved, the way the building sits in its landscape, it is immediately clear why this is listed as one of Litchfield County's most distinguished estates. It is also immediately clear why it has been sitting. Because the buyer for Philston is not looking for a house. They are looking for a legacy, and that buyer for a 122-year-old Colgate estate on 106 Connecticut acres is a very specific person. They haven't arrived yet. Listing 5, 3868 Lower Mountain Road, Lockport, New York. This next listing is in Lockport, New York, and I want to show you something about how it appears on Zillow before we get into the property itself. 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms. Built 2013, sold September 2025 for $4,500,000. And then the square footage. Zillow lists this property at 3,771,425 square feet. 3,771,425 square feet. For context, the Pentagon, the largest office building in the world, is approximately 6.5 million square feet. This Zillow listing claims to be more than half the size of the Pentagon. Obviously, this is a data entry error. The actual property is significantly smaller, but it is a Zillow listing. It is live. And anyone who pulls it up sees 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, 3.7 million square feet, $4.5 million. Now, the actual property. 3868 Lower Mountain Road, built 2013, so relatively new. 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms across what is actually a significant custom home on Lower Mountain Road outside Lockport. Lockport, New York sits in Niagara County, about 20 miles from Niagara Falls and Lake Ontario. Lower Mountain Road runs through a specific stretch of the Niagara Escarpment, a geological formation that cuts across this part of western New York, creating dramatic elevation changes and dense wooded terrain that gives this area a distinctly remote, isolated character. From the listing photos, a custom-built modern home set into this terrain. 6 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms suggest a property designed for either a large family or significant hospitality use. Sold for $4,500,000 in September 2025. What makes this listing land on today's video is the combination of factors. The isolation of Lower Mountain Road, the wooded, escarpment terrain visible in the photos. The fact that a property with a $4.5 million sale price has a Zillow data entry listing it at 3.7 million square feet, which means when you find this listing, the first thing you see is a number that makes no sense. And then you look at the photos, and it is large, and it is remote, and it is surrounded by trees. At $4.5 million, someone decided this specific combination of size, isolation, and terrain was worth that number. Make of that what you will. Listing 6, 715 7 TH Street, Fairbury, Nebraska. Our 6th listing today is in Fairbury, Nebraska. Fairbury, Jefferson County, Nebraska. Population approximately 3,800 people. Located in the southeastern corner of the state on the old Oregon Trail route in the flat agricultural land of the Republican River Valley, 7th Street. 3 bedrooms, sold for $35,000. $35,000. In a town where the average home price on 7th Street, according to public property records, is approximately $38,000, meaning this property sold for right at the neighborhood average, which tells you something specific about Fairbury. Look at the building. 7th Street in Fairbury is a residential street of homes built primarily between 1890 and 1930, the era when this part of Nebraska was being settled by families who came along the Oregon Trail route and decided to stay. The houses on this street were built to last. Brick and wood construction, built by people who intended to put down roots in the Nebraska prairie and needed structures that could handle the winters and the summers and the flat, unbroken wind. 715 7th Street sits among them. 3 bedrooms. $35,000. Now, Fairbury, Nebraska in 2025. The town has been losing population slowly for decades. The agricultural economy that built it has consolidated. Farms are larger, require fewer workers, support fewer families in town. The school district has fewer students than it did 30 years ago. Businesses on the main street have been replaced by empty storefronts, but the houses remain, the streets remain, the infrastructure remains. And so properties like 715 7th Street, 3 bedrooms, solid construction, on a quiet residential street of 1890s to 1930s homes are available for $35,000. The listing sat, then it sold for $35,000, which in Fairbury, Nebraska is a completely normal transaction. In the context of American real estate in 2025, it is a number that belongs on this video. Because right now, as you watch this, there are streets in Fairbury that look exactly like 7th Street. Streets of solid, livable, built-to-last Nebraska houses available for prices that stop making sense the moment you compare them to any other real estate market in America. $35,000. 3 bedrooms. Fairbury, Nebraska, on the old Oregon Trail. In the Republican River Valley, in a town of 3,800 people where the wind comes across the flat land with nothing to stop it. Available. For the right person, who knows what they're looking for. Listing 7, Burden's Point, Eastport, Newfoundland. Our final listing is in Canada, and it is, in my opinion, the most visually striking property on today's list. Burden's Point, Eastport, Newfoundland. On the island of Newfoundland, on the eastern edge of Canada, jutting out into the cold North Atlantic. What you're looking at is a 1.14 acre waterfront point of land with 2 structures on it, the Dunn House and the Burden House, both built in the vernacular Newfoundland architectural tradition in 1912. Listed at $1,200,000 Canadian. Let me describe what the listing photos show. 2 white wooden houses. The kind of simple, honest construction that Newfoundland fishing communities built for over 2 centuries. Not ornate, not decorated, but built with extraordinary durability for an extraordinary climate, on a point of land that extends into the harbor at Eastport. Water on 3 sides. The open Atlantic visible in the distance. The listing description says access to Burden's Point is by a short boat ride or walk across the harbor, which means when the water is right, you can reach this property by sea. The Burden House contains a large kitchen and dining space. The Dunn House contains a family room with an open kitchenette and dining area. Both homes have 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. An architectural firm called Reflect Architecture completed a comprehensive rebuild of both structures, preserving the original facades entirely while modernizing the interiors. The listing says their guiding principle was, quote, the avoidance of conspicuous design gestures in favor of exercised constraint. Look at what surrounds these buildings. The harbor at Eastport, Newfoundland. The Bonavista Peninsula in the distance. The rock and spruce of the Newfoundland coastline. The color of North Atlantic water, which is not the blue of tropical oceans, but a specific gray-green that changes with the weather in ways that make the light on these buildings shift constantly. The listing says you are, quote, living in the pages of a design magazine, able to step out the door to enjoy hiking, boating, nature, and all that the rugged landscape has to offer. Here is why Burden's point ends this video. Because looking at these photos, the 2 white houses, the point of land, the cold Atlantic water, the complete isolation from any other structure, this listing is beautiful, genuinely, architecturally, geographically beautiful, and it is also at certain times of day in certain weather, with the water flat and gray and the light coming from a specific angle. One of the most eerie images I have ever seen attached to a real estate listing. The 2 houses, the point, the water on 3 sides. The listing describes it as magical waterfront solitude. That word, solitude, is doing a lot of work in that description. At $1,200,000 Canadian on a point of land in Newfoundland, accessible by boat, this is available for whoever wants to be that alone with the Atlantic.